He confessed, calmly, plainly, without hesitation, not in fear, not in anger, just certainty. "I did it," he said, "but you won't find a single mark." And he was right. No bruises, no fingerprints, no torn fibers or broken glass. The woman he spoke of was gone, but the room was untouched. Even her teacup was still warm, placed gently on a linen coaster. How do you remove someone without leaving a trace? How does a confession become more disturbing when there's no proof it ever happened? Olympia was the kind of town people forget how to talk about. Not for lack of beauty. There were lakes that mirrored the sky, bookstores that still smelled like paper, and corner cafes where strangers nodded at one another out of quiet ritual. It was the silence between people that made the place unique. Not a tense silence, but a practiced one. Everyone knew just enough and wanted to know no more. In this town, Unit 2B of a pale green apartment complex sat halfway up a hill. Built in the 70s, it had wide windows, aluminum railings, and the peculiar stillness of places caught in time. The residents were older, but not elderly. Quiet, but not unfriendly. You might hear a piano on a Sunday morning, or the soft rustle of newspapers in the hall. Maren Elwell had lived there for 3 years. She was the sort of person people described as delicate, though they never meant it unkindly. Always in muted tones, with a scarf around her neck and a canvas tote on her arm, she moved like she didn't want to disturb the space around her. Her days were structured, almost mathematical. Early walks, herbal tea, and hours tending to rare orchids at the town's botanical gardens. People liked her, though no one truly knew her. She was always kind, never warm. You could remember her face, but not her stories. Across the hall, in Unit 2A, lived Jonah Hale. No one remembered him moving in. He simply appeared one spring, carrying a single duffel bag and wearing leather gloves despite the mild weather. He worked nights, or claimed to. No one heard footsteps. No one heard anything. Maren and Jonah, as far as anyone knew, had only spoken once, over a package misdelivery. She smiled politely, he said little. But weeks later, Maren stopped humming in the elevator. She started double-locking her door. Small things, easy to overlook. And then came the sound no one could quite place, barely audible through the wall. A low tone, repeating like something mechanical or musical that never resolved. Most people ignored it. The building was old. No reason to worry. Until Jonah walked into the police station. Until he said her name. Until he claimed she wouldn't be coming back. That's when someone remembered it. The music. That strange, repeating note, fading through the wall the night before she was never seen again. A sound no one thought mattered. Until it was the only thing left. Monday, 8:13 a.m. Maren Elwell entered the building holding a reusable grocery bag. Lemons, fresh rosemary, oat milk tucked visibly at the top. She smiled at the front desk clerk, pressed the button to the second floor, and was seen entering Unit 2B on camera. Nothing seemed unusual. Her walk was steady, her keys didn't fumble, and her door closed gently behind her. 10:25 a.m. A courier dropped off a package labeled fragile. No one answered the door, but that wasn't odd. People in this building often worked from home with noise-cancelling headphones or simply preferred not to be disturbed. The box, never opened, would later be found still sealed on the floor. 12:07 p.m. A neighbour across the hall, Mrs. Kadri, reported hearing music, faint piano chords, something classical. She couldn't place the composer. The odd part was its length. It never stopped. The same 17-second melody repeated in a loop for over an hour, like a vinyl skipping, but on a digital device. 3:44 p.m. Building maintenance recorded a brief outage. A fuse had tripped in the second-floor west wing, affecting units 2A to 2D. Lights flickered, power cycled, but everything returned to normal within 90 seconds. The incident wasn't flagged as urgent. Jonah Hale called down that evening to ask if the hallway light could be replaced. It had started flickering again. 5:01 p.m. Someone buzzed up from the front gate. A man claiming to be Marin's brother said he was visiting early, but when security reviewed the tape later, they found no such person on camera. No one came through the gate. The intercom had been activated, but from inside the building, not the outside console. 6:32 p.m. Marin's phone received a call. The ID showed unknown. It rang twice. No voicemail. The next morning, the battery would be at 4%, untouched since that moment. Tuesday, 7:45 a.m. A florist arrived with a bouquet, lavender, peonies, 2 calla lilies. The delivery slip had no sender's name. It was addressed simply to Marin, who always remembers the small things. The flowers were left by the door. Tuesday, 9:05 a.m. Jonah Hale walked into the Olympia precinct alone. He waited in line at the reception counter. His first words were quiet but clear. "I did something to her, but you won't find it." The red herring came from the package left outside her door. Investigators spent 3 days trying to trace it, thinking it might contain something crucial. But it was only a ceramic watering can, handmade, ordered by Marin weeks before. Unused, untouched, harmless. Except perhaps for the name etched faintly on the side, Jonah. Jonah Hale wasn't what most people feared. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't erratic. In fact, that was part of the problem. He was too still, too contained, like a glass of water that never rippled, no matter how hard the table shook. He grew up in the inland sprawl of northern Arizona, raised by a mother who believed silence was a virtue. She didn't punish him. She withdrew. When he cried, she closed the door. When he asked questions, she turned on the vacuum cleaner. In time, Jonah stopped asking. He learned something else instead, that presence was conditional and vanishing was a skill. His school records were clean. Not exceptional, but efficient. No detentions, no clubs, no handwriting errors. His teachers remembered him as polite but unsettling. One described him years later as a child who never needed correction, but made you want to correct something. He lived alone for most of his adult life. No pets, no visitors. His social media presence was sterile. Quotes from obscure philosophers, black and white photos of empty rooms, clock faces frozen at 3:12. No selfies, no captions, just absence, made visible. What shaped Jonah wasn't trauma in the dramatic sense. It was the slow erosion of connection, what psychologists might call relational deprivation. But for Jonah, it became a theory that people aren't real until they're remembered. And if no one remembers you, you can do anything without consequence. In his journals, hundreds of pages written in tight, methodical script, he described something he called clean removal. Not escape, not erasure. Just the idea that a person could be gently untied from the world, like slipping a thread from a woven fabric. If done correctly, he believed, the rest of the pattern would remain, undisturbed. There was one page that stood out to investigators. It wasn't a confession, or even a plan. Just a single sentence, written over and over again. She was there until she wasn't, and no one noticed the difference. What made Jonah truly disturbing wasn't what he did. It was the ease with which he described doing it. The absence of urgency. The absence of guilt. To him, removing someone wasn't wrong. It was a form of release, like closing a book mid-sentence and never returning to the story. And the most unsettling truth. He didn't see himself as the threat. He believed he was the correction. The initial theory was clean, logical, comforting even. Jonah had done something physical, hidden her, moved her, harmed her in a way that left no marks. They just hadn't found the evidence yet. That was what detectives told themselves. Evidence always shows up. Eventually, they pulled security footage, floor plans, mail logs, building access records. They brought in scent dogs, luminol, cadaver-trained teams. They found nothing, not even a trace. The air vents were pristine. The walls held no cavities. The plumbing, bone dry. No signs of packing, no signs of panic. Just 2 chairs tucked neatly under a table, and a book left open on page 73. They started to suspect Jonah had accomplices, someone to help remove Maren when the power flickered. But he lived alone, had no phone records, no visitors. He hadn't even ordered food in 3 months. He was the only person in the building whose routine never varied, never shifted. Even his garbage had been empty for days. The only break came from a false lead, an anonymous tip. A caller claimed Maren had been spotted boarding a ferry under a different name. Grainy footage supported it. A woman, same build, same coat, same posture. But when they enhanced the image, the face didn't match. And the timestamp? It was from the day before Maren vanished. As days passed, the investigation shifted. They began studying Jonah's journals more closely, hoping for a confession coded in metaphor. One phrase appeared repeatedly. The folding of space is an internal act. At first, it sounded like nonsense, but then they noticed something strange in the apartment's architecture. Maren's unit, 2B, shared a wall with Jonah's. When measured from the hallway, the 2 units seemed identical, but inside, Jonah's living room was exactly 11 inches wider. Not a construction floor, there was no visible distortion, no removed drywall, just space that didn't line up. Behind the bookshelf in Jonah's apartment was a shallow recess, painted over, framed seamlessly. Too small for a person to enter, too deliberate to be accidental. When the wall was opened, they found nothing, no room, no void, just framing, empty. But what if it had once been more? The twist wasn't physical, it was perceptual. Jonah hadn't taken her, not in the way people understood. He had convinced her, somehow, to step out of the pattern, to vanish willingly, not through harm, through belief. The case was closed, officially unresolved. But one detective, years later, admitted something. After standing alone in Jonah's apartment, late one night, he had felt something strange, as if someone was standing in the room with him, just outside the corner of his eye. And when he turned to look, there was only shadow and the faint sound of a single piano note repeating. Some people erase themselves slowly, through silence, repetition, compliance. Others are erased by someone who believes presence is a flaw. This case offers no closure, no cause, no crime that can be punished. Only the unsettling truth. Sometimes what's missing is not the person, but the proof they ever existed at all. In the end, Jonah's words remain more disturbing than any scream. She's gone, and nothing had to break. So ask yourself, what would it take for you to disappear without a single mark?